Let's get into some shite. Welcome to the Out of Tune podcast. Thank you for joining me on this last day of November 2023, St. Andrew's Day, my anniversary. 8 years with one person. 8. That I'm not surprised that. I'm surprised she spent 8 years with this person. What kind of crazy person did I marry? It's been interesting. It's been fun. Here's the thing. 8 years ago when I married my wife, in a cemetery in Atlanta. It was a kind of a warm fall day, November 30th of the year of our Lord. I can't remember the year. 8 years ago from right now. You do the math. I'm not good at it. It was nice. It was warm. I thought it was going to be too hot. It turned out to be a perfect day. And in a cemetery, people said, "What? You're marrying in a cemetery?" I wouldn't change it. It was like beautiful, gorgeous, leaves everywhere, just like the perfect atmosphere. And we had an audience built in right there. I mean, how are you going to... It was fun. And here we are 8 years later. And it just seems like it went by so quick, but it seems like it went by not quick at all. Today, interview with Mike Faber, one of our favorite people to have on the show. I say our because I've been doing it since Life in a Kill podcast. Mike has been on, popping in on our podcast. I'm going to try to have him come back more and more. We had a great chat. So we have a lot in common. So we had a lot of things to talk about. I think you'll like the conversation. Hope so. Now, this took place outdoors. We just pulled up at a coffee shop. It's a little cold too. By the way, that's why I was telling the story. I lost my track of my track here. I don't know what's going on with me today. Anyway, I was telling the story because this week in Atlanta, it's cold. So 8 years ago it was warm. That was my point of telling that whole story. It's a cold day. It's a cold time. And Mike and I sat out in the cold a few days ago, did a little chat. It was cool. I liked it. Cool, literally. And I liked it. I will warn you, the sound might be a little off. It's not a studio recording. I will do that later. My studio, I can't get anybody in here right now. I'm still trying to get all of my gallery stuff put away, and you can't move in my studio right now. So we sat outdoors, and we had a good chat. And so, like I said, sound might be a little down. You'll hear some cars, you'll hear traffic, you'll hear people walking around, you hear kids screaming and having conversations and things like that. That's what happens when you do a live interview. But it was a nice interview, and hope you enjoy it. I'm just going to, at the end of the interview, I'm just going to say goodbye. It's just going to be done. So I'll see you again on Monday, and we'll be into December. We'll be all doing all kinds of like Christmas stuff, holiday stuff, Kwanzaa, Hanukkah, whatever happens in December. We're going to be right in the middle of it. So we'll see you then, all right? All right, so here's the interview. Here's Mike. All right, Mike Faber is here with me. We're here outside. It's kind of cold.
It's a little chilly.
For Atlanta, this is cold. I'm always amazed at when in 90-degree weather when I see people wearing hoodies and sweaters in Atlanta.
I know, but it's funny. I saw somebody in the coffee shop that we're sitting out in front of wearing shorts.
Yeah.
So it's like...
I saw the hoodie and the shorts thing yesterday.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know. That's what I love about Atlanta. But I wait to bundle up all year.
Of course.
And you don't get that opportunity much here.
See, I lived in Seattle for a long time.
Right.
And so
D.C., right?
I lived in D.C., I lived in Seattle, I lived in Los Angeles. So I'm used to all different climates. And Seattle is where I learned how to layer.
Yeah.
And everything. Because it could be freezing like this, in the 40s in the morning, but then it could be in the low 70s by the afternoon. So you have to dress appropriately.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we caught a little cold weather because it's seasonal, I think.
Well, it's you could see the stuff they're setting up for Christmas and everything.
Totally.
It feels good.
Yeah.
It feels like it.
Well, let's give a little background here for people. This is Mike Faber. Now, you have a history with me, but with my podcast. So you did the Kilt Show once.
I did the Kilt Show once.
Life in a Kilt podcast once. You did This Epic Disaster like twice, I think, maybe 3. You were like our annual December guest.
I taught you guys about Hanukkah.
Yeah, that was so much fun when you brought all your menorahs in. Every time I see a menorah, I think, I got to get that from Mike. I've seen a lot of unique ones. But
and that's what we love, because Judy and I collect menorahs.
Yeah.
And we try to get the most unusual type and everything. And it's funny, like when you go out into the country or something, like to a antique store or to a flea market or something like that, it's really interesting because they don't list them as menorahs because they don't know.
Right.
They usually put candelabra or something like that.
Yeah, that's true. And I've seen that.
And it's funny as heck to see. But it's cool because you find some very unique stuff in the weirdest places.
Yeah.
And everything. And one of the things Judy and I actually have started doing the last 2 years, I don't know if you've ever heard of the world's longest yard sale.
Yeah. It used to run right through Chattanooga when I was living.
It still does.
Yeah.
It still does. It goes all the way from Gadsden, Alabama, all the way up to Central Michigan. And so the last 2 years we've done it. The first year we did it, we went from Chattanooga and we ended up in the second day up in southern Kentucky.
Wow.
And everything. And it's, people can do that usually in like 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah.
And everything. But because you're stopping every 2 minutes and everything to go to another
and
yard
spending
sale.
all your gas money.
Exactly. But this year we actually we drove up to Cincinnati.
Wow.
And then we drove back here towards us. And we made it from Cincinnati all the way to southern Kentucky the first night.
Now, is there a pattern on things you see out in the yard sales? I mean, it's just like, oh, wow, there's a lot of stuffed animals in this city. There's a lot of...
It depends. It depends. It's like, sometimes it's like going to a regular yard sale, nothing you're going to even want to look at. Kids' clothes or stuff, but it's stuff for everything.
Right.
And then you come up to a field where people have set up stalls and everything, and it's like a huge flea market.
Right.
And everything. So it's just not little yard sales. There's some huge stuff. There's even some permanent buildings and everything.
For that one event?
Yeah.
Wow.
Because it's been going on almost 30 years.
Yeah.
And everything. And it's an annual event.
Yeah.
And people, it goes from Thursday morning all the way till Sunday night.
Yeah.
And some people try to make the whole route and everything.
Oh, wow.
And I don't think I'd be able to do it. And it was real interesting this year because Kentucky was great. People were really nice. People were really sweet. It was interesting when we got around to like Cooksville, Tennessee, and everything. We started seeing some very stuff that made me very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And everything. It was like we saw stuff, a lot of militia stuff.
Yeah, I see that.
A lot of KKK stuff. A lot of Nazi stuff and everything. And, and it's just like, really?
Yeah.
And then after we got back from there, we looked up some of the history, and I didn't even realize that the Klan started in Cooksville.
Yeah, Putnam County, wasn't it?
Yeah.
What Pulaski?
I think so. Something
Tennessee,
like that.
something like that. Yeah, definitely. Well, and of course, I'm certainly not excusing the Klan, but at the time it started, it was more like a Masonic lodge, a racist Masonic lodge, than what it is now. It's just like totally mutated into something different. But
it was always ugly, but it got even more ugly.
Totally, yeah. So my wife and I went up to North Georgia. I guess it was early this year, and we did some antiquing. I think we were staying in a cabin up there, and we went into this place we'd never seen before. It looked really cool. And then we kind of wandered to the back of the antique store, and there's this row of all these people that had white supremacist stuff. It was Klan stuff. They had Klan like hoods and flags, but then I started looking at the books, and there were books on how just the history of white enslavement.
Really?
It was like this was the fringe, and we left. I was just like, I'm not going to give them my money,
Oh,
so I
God.
just walked out. But it's here.
No.
It's here. Racism, and that's a whole nother show. But I have friends in L.A. I have friends in New York and up north, and they're always talking about racism in the South. I'm like, look in your own backyard,
Yeah.
because every time you hear about some big like some crazy racist person with their gun, it's always in the North.
Oh yeah, very
It's
much so.
everybody's backyard. There's no such thing as here.
There is no such thing as southern racism and everything.
No.
It's everywhere.
And it's getting worse.
It is.
I want to say it's getting worse. It's getting worse as far as reporting. I meet people all the time, and I feel like most people aren't that. It's why it's so loud, is because they need that voice, so they're trying to scream louder.
Well, it's interesting because Judy and I actually were talking about a similar subject about. We were out with some friends yesterday, and they're a little bit younger than us. They're probably in their early 40s.
Yeah.
And we were talking about, cell phones and stuff, and they were like saying, "Oh, we got, our first cell phones when we were in high school and
Yeah.
everything." And Judy and I looked at each other and we went, "Oh, we got ours when we were in our 30s."
Yeah,
and everything. And it was just like, "Oh God, I feel old."
Yeah.
But it's interesting because we were talking about this morning on the way down here. When we were talking about, it's like, is life, do you remember how life was beforehand?
Yeah.
And it was interesting. A lot of the crap we see nowadays and everything, it was out there. It was, it was very present, but we didn't have exposure to it because we didn't have the internet. We didn't have 24-hour news or anything like that, where they had it, it was not right in our faces.
Right.
We didn't know what was going on in central United States. We didn't know what was going on the West Coast other than Hollywood stuff. We didn't know what was going in Canada, Mexico.
Until the
Europe.
newspaper came out the next day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That was the
You
only
got
way
one
you
shot.
know it.
That and the
Exactly.
evening news, I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it was just a lot more isolated.
Yeah.
And everything. And the world is much more open because of that and everything. Look at everything that's going on in the Middle East right now and everything. It's right in our faces right now.
Totally,
because
It's like you're
we have
being here.
24
They are.
access. Exactly. So
Well, there's
it's
some
interesting.
benefits of that. Well, I was listening to a talk the other day, a recording. I think it was probably recorded in the 50s. And the guy was mentioning while he was talking, he was like, it's important to get out and vote on this issue that they're getting ready. If you don't vote on it, they're going to abolish the Supreme Court. And I thought, wow, really? That was going on back in the 50s too. It was just like
Wow.
the same thing, the same issues. And I guess it's easy to feel like you're the only, that we're going through like unique times, but I think a lot of it was repeating. I mean, you still had the same people trying to take away freedoms. You still had it's just packaged in a whole different way.
Exactly. It's the same stories. It's the same interests, but it's repackaged for the 21st century,
Yeah.
basically.
Well, let's back up a little bit. Let's talk about. So you're a podcast guy.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to go down that
No,
path.
we need to go down that. I'm going to get into an area here in a little bit, and we'll talk a little bit in a few minutes. First, I want to give a little background on
sure.
on you.
Of course.
You're a podcast guy. You have how many podcasts?
Currently, I'm currently I'm hosting 2 podcasts.
Right.
I produce 3 others.
Yeah. And you distribute a
And
gazillion.
I distribute right now. ESO Network right now is about 19 podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
We were up to, at one point we were up to 36.
Yeah.
But shows stop.
Yeah.
And everything. And I also now teach people also how to podcast.
Which is great. Be a
Yeah.
consultant.
Well, exactly.
What would be awesome, sorry to go off on this, is have you thought about having a studio where you rent out the studio, people use equipment, and you kind of, because I know people ask about that all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I've thought about it, but then you have to come up with capital and studio
Right.
space and everything like
Yeah.
that. And
And most podcasts don't make money.
no. And that's one of the things. Right now, I'm doing a podcast for 3 veterans in the Hollywood movie industry, and
Okay.
they're all older guys. They're in their either late 60s all the way into the early 80s,
Okay.
and they have probably between the 3 of them probably close to 100 years of movie industry work, and the stories they tell and the people they know, and it's amazing. These guys that were producers, they worked for the studios, they owned movie theaters, they owned magazines. One of them hosted an interview radio show in New York City from like the early 70s into the early 80s.
So it's all behind the scenes
Yeah,
stuff. That's
exactly.
awesome.
And
I love that.
and it's awesome. And it's called Tales from Hollywood Land, and we've put out 16 episodes so far. And I keep on having to temper them because they're not big names,
Right.
and everything, and they expect us to be like, one of them thinks we should be number one and having 10,000 listeners
Yeah.
a week and everything. And right now we're barely getting 100 listeners a week and everything.
Yeah.
And and I think it's going to pick up and everything once we get more celebrities on the show and they
Sure.
start promoting and
Yeah.
everything. Like 2 weeks ago, we interviewed Steve Gutenberg
Yeah.
and everything, and great guy,
Yeah.
great guy, super. He's as nice as you think he's going
Really?
to be and everything, and it's awesome that we got to do it. But right now we have 80 downloads for that episode because he hasn't promoted it yet.
Right.
Once he promotes it on his social media, it's probably going to get over 1,000 downloads.
I've had a couple of guests like that who come in and do a show, and then they don't promote it, and they wonder why it didn't take off. I'm like, dude, this is for your audience.
Well,
No
exactly.
one, my people don't know who you are. This is like for your audience to listen to you talk. That's why I had you as a guest. So do some promotion, and
Well,
that's when it
exactly.
happens.
Oh, exactly. It's with podcasting, it's all word of mouth.
Yeah.
And it's, you tell a friend, they tell 2 friends, and so on and so forth. Not to, not going about an old 70s TV commercial right there. But it's really awesome with it is, it's all word of mouth. You can advertise, you can do Facebook ads and stuff like that. You're maybe going to get 10 extra downloads
Yeah.
because of it, but you're going to spend a lot of money. Most podcasts, if they get over 100 downloads an episode, you're doing great.
Yeah.
And everything. And because I also, like I said, I teach people how to podcast.
Yeah.
And one of the things I tell them is you're going to be lucky to get to 1,000 downloads within the first 6 months.
Yeah.
And because you're not a celebrity, you're not a name. You hear about all these celebrities, what was it? Jason Bateman
Yeah.
signed a contract for $8 million
Holy crap.
for a podcast
Was
that he's
that
doing.
Jason and Sean Hayes and
Exactly.
who's the other voice of Batman?
Oh, Kevin Conroy? No.
No, the other guy that was on, wasn't he on
Oh,
Saturday
Will
Night?
Arnett.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they have a great podcast and everything, but they're 3 big celebrities.
Totally, yeah.
That's why they're getting it. And, Kevin Smith, Mark Maron, Joe Rogan,
Yeah.
all those. And you also, or if you're a business or something like that, you're going to have a captured audience.
Yeah.
And that's why you get a lot of great people, listening to your shows.
Yeah.
Where, you and I are doing a podcast.
Yeah.
Nobody knows us from Adam.
Yeah.
And everything. And you're going to, you have to be the promoter. You have to be the person getting out there and doing the legwork and everything.
Well, what are your shows? What are your podcasts?
Right now, Earth Station 1 is the main podcast.
And what is that about?
Earth Station 1 has been going since 2010.
Wow. You're like
And-
a pioneer.
I've been podcasting since 2007.
Holy crap.
And so, yeah, I got into it in the early years because it was one of those things where I had started listening to some of the other podcasts that were out at that time, and I was like, I've got the voice for it.
Yeah.
I know I could learn the technology. I can do this. If these guys can do it, so can I, and everything. But I still need to call my son. How do I program the DVR?
Right.
And everything. But I've learned how to do it, and I've started doing it. So Earth Station 1, we've been doing since 2010. It's a geek-themed podcast, but we've changed formats a little bit. We're, cutting it down that it's more of a podcast about geekdom, but we're not, and every once in a while we'll do interviews, but we also talk about LGBT issues. We also talk about some social issues. We talk about music. We talk about movies. We talk about, whatever topic is science, whatever's on our mind. And we have right now, I think we're putting out episode 736 this next week. And we've done it weekly. And we're talking
one
about,
a week, right?
Yeah, we're talking about eventually shortening the episodes, like to a 30-minute episode, and maybe putting out twice a week.
That's what I do.
And that's what, it's probably something simple like that.
Yeah.
And everything. And it's kind of fun to do.
Yeah.
But we're also getting into video also now.
Okay.
So
extra or like
on top of it.
Okay.
And so we're doing video and audio. So we have the audio podcast still, but we're also up on YouTube now. Yeah. And that's a whole nother beast, because that's a whole nother level of editing,
right,
and everything, and having visuals and stuff like that.
I know there's a lot of podcasts of people that I really like who are doing video podcasts. I've never watched them because I listen to podcasts in my car,
right,
and I can't do a video.
No.
So I find that I consume video podcasts much less than I do audio. So
sure.
I will do a special video every once in a while.
It's interesting, though, because YouTube is now one of the largest, next to Apple, the largest distributor for podcasts.
Yeah.
Because so many people are moving to video and everything, which is pretty fascinating stuff.
My podcast distributes to YouTube, and I just found out like a week or two ago that I have subscribers on YouTube that I didn't know I had.
Exactly.
And I'm getting more listeners through YouTube than I am through my other distributors.
Really?
Yes.
That's interesting.
I had no idea. I was just like, whoa. And it's not even video. Somebody's listening to it.
Oh, I know. They just have a picture of your logo.
Yeah.
And they have the audio with it and everything. It's pretty fascinating stuff that you get with that. And it's interesting, too, because, most podcasts are trying to evolve right now, trying to find their markets and everything. It's funny because I used to tell in my class that podcasting in 2023 is like having a tramp stamp in 2000. Everyone had one. Yeah. And everyone, and some people regret it, some people don't.
Right.
And same thing with podcasting, because everyone now has a podcast, and there's thousands and thousands and thousands of podcasts now out there, and as you're listening to them, you are, you're lucky if you can capture somebody's attention and they subscribe or they give you a like or whatever.
It's like a CB radio in the 70s. Everybody had the CB and the little handle, and you got on there. But I think in some ways I like it. I like this little glimpse, and everybody can have their own show. It's like your little glimpse into your own life.
Sure.
But you have there's a conflict, because this is the one thing I always tell anybody who asks me about podcasts. I always say, do something you love doing and don't look at your numbers.
Never look at your numbers. Basically, the best thing you could do is have fun with it. Yeah. Because your listeners can tell when you're not having fun with it anymore.
Do it even if you're doing it to 0 people.
Well, exactly. Your mom's going to listen, or or
my mom. I hope she doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. There's some people,
Yeah.
Sorry, Mom, if you listen to this, 'cause,
right.
We're going to get raunchy on this one, or something like that. But but it's interesting. But there's things for every type of taste.
Yeah.
Because one of the other podcasts I do is a Doctor Who podcast.
Right.
And so we're all excited because Doctor Who came back yesterday and everything as of this recording. And so we're going to have new content to talk about. Before that, we were talking about older episodes. We were talking about Doctor Who books. We were talking about even some of the comic books or the Big Finish audios, which they do in the UK. And great stuff. There's enough content to keep us going for years still to come. And there's an audience for that. And so I do that. Then I also produce the Dragon Con report. I used to host it and everything, but I'd step back from hosting it because I'm no longer going to Dragon Con.
Okay.
And everything. I decided I've gone for 18 years. It was time to stop.
Yeah.
And everything like that.
Sometimes you got to step back.
Exactly. So I stopped back from that, and now I'm producing the old Jewish guys, as I like to call them,
Really?
the Tales from Hollywoodland podcast.
I think I got to find that podcast because that really interests me.
Oh, it's awesome.
While I was setting up here, this couple got out of their car. They walked by, and the guy was like, "Oh, you're doing an interview?" And he starts chatting with me, and he said, "You have a podcast?" And I told him about it, and I said, "Yeah, the guy that I'm interviewing does a Doctor Who podcast." And he was like, "I just watched the new Doctor Who," and then he starts chatting. So I think I got you an extra listener.
That's wonderful. That's even better.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool, and I always have ideas for new ones. Like I also foster and help become executive producer for other podcasts.
Yeah.
I've set up a Monkees podcast that we do on my network called Monkeying Around. Then we also have an Earth Station Trek podcast that I set up, and we're about to have a horror podcast on the network soon called Earth Station Boo.
Yeah.
Which is probably about 3 weeks away from starting up.
Wow.
And everything. So
you and I have kind of parallel lives. We're closest. I think you're just barely younger than me, but we have a lot of the same influences, a lot of the same interests, and a Monkees podcast. I'm like a Monkees freak.
Yeah.
And I was so I got them all on DVD, and I was so happy when they started bringing them back.
Have you heard actually the new Mickey Dolenz CD?
With REM?
Yes.
I haven't heard that. I'm looking forward to it. I've seen all the promotional stuff.
Right.
But, I downloaded their, it's been a couple years ago when they did the Christmas album.
Right.
It was when Nesmith, and I think it was before Peter Tork died. He
right.
wasn't good. He
Right.
was, and they really kind of, if you listen to it, some of his stuff seems really fragile. But they let him be on it, which was awesome. And, of course, Davey was gone.
Right.
But I listened to it, and I expected it to be really bad. Sometimes when you revisit something that's old and classic, and it's not as good as you remembered.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I shouldn't talk about my wife coming into the bedroom, but anyway,
Oops.
I downloaded and listened. It was awesome. So if you get a chance to listen to the Monkees Christmas album a couple years ago, 3 years ago,
Right.
do it because it's really good.
We were very lucky. We got to go see, I think it was 2 years ago now. It was Mickey Dolenz and Mike Nesmith. They came to Atlanta, and we got to see the tour. And you could tell that Mike was not right. He sounded great and everything, but you could tell he wasn't.
He was off.
He was off.
Yeah.
And he actually ended up passing away 2 months later.
Wow.
And it was like, I wasn't surprised after seeing him. But it was wonderful to be able to see them together and everything. And Mickey is like the Energizer Bunny. He just keeps on going.
That guy has energy. I kind of feel like he needs to get up with Paul McCartney and Ringo, and then just do like a Monkees Beatle tour.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, because there's few survivals, and so put them together and let them do each other's music and have fun.
But it was actually weird. It was about 2 weeks ago. It's like I went to one of the vinyl record stores and everything, and they had brand new album by the Rolling Stones, brand new album, new song by the Beatles. Mickey Dolenz sings REM, and it was just like
we're stepping back.
What time warp did I just walk through?
Yeah,
and everything.
Yeah, and the movies and TV shows everybody's kind of like retro right now.
Mm-hmm. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Well, I just I don't know. I follow you on Facebook, and I'm always saying your concert budget must be crazy. You see everybody.
It's interesting with concerts and such. My son's all grown up now, and he's out of the house, and I don't have to pay child support or stuff like that. So Judy and I have decided, instead of buying material stuff for us, we go to concerts or music festivals.
Yeah.
And we love seeing live music. You and I have actually been at some shows together.
Yeah.
Well, at the same time, but not together.
I think the last one was the
Nickel
Watkins
Creek.
family.
Yeah. Was it Nickel Creek or was it?
I didn't go to Nickel Creek yet.
Yes.
They're in Knoxville on my birthday, and so I've got to go.
Right. So yeah, we try to go. We've decided, let's go see live music, especially bands we like or bands we know. Who knows how much longer they're going to be around?
Like Hall & Oates.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
maybe you saw the last one.
I think we saw the last one.
Oh, they'll get back together. Too much money involved.
There's a restraining order right now.
I know.
I saw that. That was funny as hell. But yeah, we go. We just saw 2 weeks ago. We saw what was it? It was Nick Lowe and La Straitjackets.
Yeah.
It was an amazing, amazing show.
Wow.
It was down at the Variety Playhouse, and it was fun to go see, because last time I saw Nick Lowe was back in the late 80s
Yeah.
and everything. And so it's always fun to do. I think we're going to be going to see on the 11th, we're going to go see English Beat
Oh, that'll be fun.
and everything. So
Yeah, you guys saw Tears for Fears a year or two ago.
yeah, it was wonderful. I hadn't seen Tears for Fears,
One of my favorite bands.
since like 90 or
Yeah.
something like that, and they still sounded great. Everyone was singing along and everything.
Yeah.
And that's some of the funnest stuff is when you go see a show and it's a big sing along and everything. Even though I can't hold a tune,
Yeah.
if my life depended on it.
But you're in a crowd. Who cares?
Well, exactly. And one of the things we're doing now is when we can, we're videoing a lot of music and stuff that when we go see it live, and we're going to start posting all of it onto YouTube and everything. And we're going to be calling it, I think, Wandering with Mike and Judy.
Yeah.
And
Well,
everything.
that's fun.
And so it's cool, and there's so many great venues to go see stuff. We've gone up to Central Tennessee. There's a place called the Caverns,
Yeah.
and you can go see music underground.
I'm scared of that.
Why?
I'm claustrophobic.
Oh God!
And I'm always afraid that the vibrations from the music will just bring it all down. I would love to go to Red Rocks, but it's the same thing. I'm just afraid it's gonna.
Red Rocks is one of my bucket list places.
Yeah.
I've gone to the Gorge out in Washington State.
Yeah.
I've gone to see we've gone to Hollywood Bowl. We've gone to places in New York City to see concerts and stuff, and it's awesome to see some of the acoustics in these places
Yeah.
are just fabulous and everything. But Red Rocks is definitely on my list.
Yeah.
I took Judy for her birthday. I surprised her. I bought tickets for us to fly to Los Angeles, and we went to the Hollywood Bowl to see Electric Light Orchestra.
Oh wow.
And because it was when they were first starting touring again.
Yeah.
And that was like, for Judy, it was like she grew up with Jeff Lynne, and she was like, he's one of her crushes and everything like that.
Wow.
And so I took her to go see them, and it was just amazing to be able to see and everything.
Yeah.
So it's neat to be able to do stuff for people and stuff like that.
All right, let's take a turn, man. We could talk on this forever.
I
You
know.
can come back and we'll do another show. All right. Here's what I want to talk to you about
What do you
now.
Sure.
So I remember a few years ago, Sherry and I talked on the podcast about doing a God podcast. We were going to do a podcast just discussing God, and I think you listened to it, and then you sent us a text, and you were like, "I want to be in on that."
Yeah.
And then you said something, I don't remember. It was like, "That's my specialty," or "That's my training," or whatever school. I don't remember what you said.
Yeah. When I was in college, I had a degree in graphic design.
Uh-huh.
But I had a minor in mass communication and also religious studies.
Yeah.
Because there was a point in my life I had actually thought of becoming a rabbi.
Right.
I didn't want to be like one of those pulpit rabbis
Sure.
who get up in front of a synagogue. I wanted to work with kids. I wanted to do what they call Hillel, which is an outreach center on college campuses. And, more of the social aspect, learning about Jewish culture and stuff like that, more than being, us here on the
Right.
that's not me.
I totally relate.
And so it was interesting because you and I have talked off the air about religion and
Yeah.
stuff, but we've also talked about Hanukkah in the past and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting, especially with what's going on in the world today. People don't understand about everything going on with Israel, with everything going on with the Palestinians, and the land of the country of Israel, and how that's been Jewish land for over 3,000 years,
Right.
and everything like that. And governments come and go, but it's people have to understand this whole area in the world, that's the Bible out there, and Old Testament and New Testament.
Yes.
And so it's real interesting with that, because when I was in school, I just didn't learn about Judaism and everything. I also learned about Christianity. I learned about Muslim. I learned about Hindu. I learned about all the different things and what it means to people and everything, and where it stands. It's pretty awesome when it comes
Yeah.
to that and everything.
Tell me how it influences your life. Do you consider yourself a spiritual person?
I consider myself spiritual. I don't consider myself religious.
Yeah, I would say that same thing. So I'm going to pin you down here and say,
In public?
define what you mean by spiritual and spirituality.
Spirituality is knowing that there's maybe a being up there, or knowing that, you know, something's guiding us.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's somebody who's controlling my destiny or controlling, you know, I make my own decisions. I don't
Sure.
think it's preordained or whatever, like some people say. And it's interesting because Jewish people believe certain things, and we don't believe in hell. We don't believe in Satan or anything like that, even though it's a lot of that is in the Old Testaments and everything. But we, you know, and for me, I pick and choose what I believe in, as do most people.
Sure.
And everything. And they choose what is the most important and how it interacts with their lives. You know, I try to be a good person and everything. And, you know, I've done stuff in my past that wouldn't be considered being a good person. But I don't think, you know, now that I'm in my 50s, I look back at it and going, made some dumb decisions.
Yeah.
But I don't, you know, I don't look at it religiously or
Yeah.
something. You know, it's just being a kid.
Do you feel like as you've gotten older, it's diminished or it's gotten stronger?
Both.
Yeah.
Certain parts of it's diminished. Some of it's become more important to me. It's as I became a father.
Yeah.
As I became more of a responsible person.
Yeah.
Growing up and everything, and I use responsible with air quotes, of
Yeah.
course. But it's more of, you know, with it becoming, you know, religious, you know, because my wife grew up a lot more religious than I did,
Right.
and everything, and you know, hearing how her point of views are and doing it, and you know, because some of Judaism is depending on what sect of it you are. Some people keep kosher, some people keep, and you know, she grew up in a kosher house. I never did, you know.
Right.
I introduced her to her first cheeseburger and everything.
Oh, wow.
And everything, and you know, because in stuff like that, you know, or you know, to this day, there's certain seafoods she can't eat because she doesn't oppose to it or anything, but because of the diet she grew up with,
Yeah.
it's just weird to her to
Yeah.
eat that type of stuff and everything. So it's how you choose to interact with it and
Right.
how you do with it. We do like all the, you know, the big holidays now. When I was younger, I never did and everything. I knew about them. I knew what they meant and everything. But, you know, when growing up, we mostly did only Hanukkah,
Yeah.
you know, type thing, because we were competing with Christmas,
Yeah.
you know, type things. And in Judaism, Hanukkah is not even one of the big holidays now and everything. And I learned that as I grew older, and I
Yeah.
started learning about the religion and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And so it's interesting.
I feel like, and anybody who lives on this world knows this, but I just feel like that the climate of humanity there's this seething pot of anger under society, but under every individual, it seems like. And I don't know necessarily where that comes from. I have some ideas. There's some frustrations and things like that, but that spills out into, now it's spilling out, it spills out into politics, how we relate to people socially, laws, just everybody's country, how you deal with people on social media even, and even just like even doing podcasts. There's a lot of angry podcasts out there.
Oh, there's tons of them. And the thing is with it is there is a lot of anger
Yeah.
and everything. But it's also stoked a lot by society nowadays, by what's being broadcast and everything. And we have, you know, members in our family that we don't talk to all that much anymore
Yeah.
because of their beliefs,
Yeah.
because of their anger, and because of their listening to certain sources and, you know, believing it,
Yeah.
even though it's completely wrong,
Right.
and everything. But it's me saying it's wrong.
Yeah.
They could believe it's right for them and their kids, and we're like, okay, if you believe that, we just decide not to be with you because we don't want to be in that kind of negative,
Yeah.
you know, atmosphere, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think so. Well, I feel like so, and this podcast isn't about me, but I'm gonna really quick say. So I grew up Christian.
Right.
Early on, I would say more like fundamentalist Christian, just because of where I grew up.
Yeah, of course.
But as I was a learner, and as I educated myself, I think I kind of moved into a more progressive and became more what you might call the Christian left. But I always had this like inner thing. I don't know where it came from, but
Right.
like this inner voice that always said, study Zen, get into Zen. I didn't know what Zen was.
Right.
I didn't know why I needed to do that. And I would look it up, and it just didn't make any sense to me. I was like, this is nonsense stuff. And it wasn't until I got out of high school that I found this book that kind of combines Zen and Christianity, and that changed my life. It kind of moved me on this progression of getting out of Orthodox Christianity.
Sure.
And took me into metaphysics and all this stuff. Anyway, I spent I think it was the year I met Sherry when I was in my 40s. And I was in meditation one night, and it's like this voice I was like, why can't I contact God? And it was like a voice, almost an audible voice said, because there is not one.
True.
And I was like, holy crap. It was like a lightning bolt hit me. It changed my life for 10 years. I was an atheist for 10 years.
Wow.
And then, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, I had the same type of experience that brought me back into spirituality, but it was in a whole different way of experiencing spirituality that I never really knew about before, never really understood before. And it's beyond labels. It's beyond, so I guess what I'm getting at is, to me, it's the missing piece in society. And when I say spirituality, I'm not talking about Christianity, Judaism,
Whatever.
Islam,
Yeah.
none of that. You can have that. I
Right.
have no problem with it. That's religion to me, though. But spirituality is learning your essence, learning who you are, and coming to terms with that. Because when you find out who you are, you find out who other people are, and then you can deal with them on that level. And right now we deal with each other as if we're all from different warring countries.
Right.
You know,
No, of course.
we're all like going to attack each other, and when we realize we're all made of the same stuff,
Well, exactly.
both physically and spiritually, it solves so many problems.
Oh, exactly. And it's interesting because I read something recently that a lot of the younger people are becoming more and more atheist.
Yes.
And the church attendance is dropping across all religions. And when I say church, I mean, mosques, synagogues, whatever. The attendance is dropping because more people are realizing they could be spiritual wherever. They don't have to be in a church to do it.
Yeah.
And everything. But it's also, people are seeing a lot of the hypocrisy of religion and everything, a lot of organized religion.
Yeah.
And stuff. And that's what it turned me off a lot from Judaism.
Yeah.
In some ways, a lot of the hypocrisy and stuff. I have relatives of mine who are Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah.
And huge hypocrisy there.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting because, especially, they try to, what they do, they apostatize. So they go out to try to convert people.
Sure.
And when I first moved to Georgia over 20 years ago, they tried to convert me and everything. And I even, out of respect for my relatives, I even went to some of the meetings and everything. And some of it was really interesting and everything. What turned me off to it, though, was how closed-minded they were. They wouldn't let me bring fiction into it, especially anything with mysticism or anything like that. So it was more like they wouldn't let me bring Lord of the Rings books, Harry Potter books, anything with superheroes, nothing into their house because it could corrupt them.
Yeah.
And
Have you
everything.
read the Bible?
Exactly.
There's a lot of kind of spooky stuff in there.
Well, exactly. And so it was just interesting. That turned me off. And then the one thing that broke it, because I've always had friends who were LGBT, alternative lifestyle, whatever. And I have no problem at all with that. They wanted me to disassociate with those kind of friends.
Sure.
And my relative pulled me aside one day and says, Michael, we don't think you should be associating with them because in the Bible, it's Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve.
Yeah.
and it was like, warning sign, I'm
Right,
out of there.
right.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
And, within a month, I was already looking for my own apartment.
Yeah.
I was already like, I don't want to be in this kind of atmosphere.
Yeah.
And it's like, this just made me feel uncomfortable.
Right.
And everything, which was ridiculous.
I think we're seeing in government what happened with religion. So the distrust of the top worked its way down to where people started leaving the church, and I'm seeing that happen with the distrust. And there's always been distrust in government. But
Of course.
I feel like younger people are more and more becoming like, I have no use for that, and I feel like that it's creating this cancer underneath that's going to completely dissolve democracy. And there are some people who love that. Some people are fine with it.
Right.
But I feel like that we might, as a society, we might really be in trouble.
I think in a lot of ways we are in trouble because certain sects of religion are influencing the way our politics is right now.
Yeah.
And to a degree where it's becoming way too extreme. And, there needs to be some kind of happy medium with it. Because especially in the United States, as I'm looking at a cross right now across the street, there needs to be a separation from church and state.
Yeah.
And that's what the founders of the Constitution did. And it's interesting because now it's become way too blurred between it. And, you have people on the far right who are perverting, what Jesus said and what everything for their benefit
Their own
as
political
they get richer and richer.
Totally, yeah.
And where, Jesus would want them to be helping the poor, the needy, and everything. If he came back now and saw what his religion, it wasn't even his religion. No. It was his apostles' religion.
Right.
And everything.
Paul really made Christianity.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
Jesus was a rabbi.
Right.
And, he preached, all this thing, but his apostles perverted it and converted it into New Testament. And that's what became Christianity, and Christianity split into all the different sects.
Well, man, I can go on forever. We
I
can do
know.
this forever. I get it, but I'm going to have to put a stop to it.
I know.
We're going to have to.
Sorry about that.
No, I'm not stopping for you. I'm just saying we could go on for 2, 3, 4 hours. Tell me where people can find your stuff.
Mostly
Podcasts.
right now, ESONetwork.com.
Yeah.
TalesFromHollywoodland.com. Definitely, or check us up, Earth Station 1, up on YouTube. Really would appreciate it.
Yeah.
And, I have other projects I'm working at, and I might actually even become a travel agent. So,
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So, yeah, Judy and I are working on a couple different things because, we have ideas for businesses all the time and everything. And one of the things we're doing is possibly looking at doing, like, travel agency to help people out and very low pressure type stuff.
Sure.
And everything. But, we'll see how it goes.
It's needed.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sitting down with me again, man. We got to do it again. Maybe not another 5 years.
I hope not. I always enjoy talking to you.
Yeah,
man.
it'll be fun. But yeah, thanks for listening. Thanks for delivering, and thanks for working to make podcasts better.
My pleasure.
Yeah,
It's
you've been kind of an influence on me. I remember when we first started doing podcasts, somebody said, you need to talk to Mike Faber. And I was like, who's that? And there was,
exactly.
and we started chatting, and we were like, oh, wow, this is somebody we definitely need to talk to.
I remember the first time I met you, your wife,
Yeah.
and Sherry. And
Yeah.
it was just like, we went out for coffee, and it was just
Yep.
like, it clicked real quick.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
there was everything. And you guys you did some great stuff, and I'm glad you're doing still podcasting.
Hopefully one day this will become great stuff. It takes a while to develop, though,
Of course.
All right. We'll see you next time, Mike. Thank you very much.
Been a pleasure, my
All
friend.
right, bye.